So the question we need to ask is, why would a Muslim use an axe to kill people he didn't like? Hi. By now I'm sure you've all heard the recent news in Germany. An Afghan Muslim refugee boarded a train and while shouting Allahu Akbar, he started attacking and chopping innocent passengers with an axe, and he was shot dead by the police. Also, an Islamic flag was later found in his bedroom. So the question we need to ask is, why would a Muslim use an axe to kill people he didn't like? Is there any basis for this in Islam? For the answer, I take you back to the Islamic sources. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, a blind man had a pregnant slave who used to revile the Prophet, meaning Muhammad, and defame him. He, the blind man, forbade her, but she did not stop. One night he took a pickaxe, put it on her belly, leaned on it, and killed her. The Prophet was informed about that, so he said, "Be witness that the spilling of her blood is lawful with impunity." This basically means there was no diya, or compensation or blood money, to be paid for her blood. And Abu Dawood reported this narration with a trustworthy, reliable chain of narrators. So, we have our answer. According to this Islamic source, there is a basis in Islam for a Muslim to use an axe to kill disliked people. Because, as you have just seen, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad himself, approved a similar action. So the question we need to ask is, why would a Muslim use an axe to kill people he didn't like?
A man suspected of killing a commuter with a knife at a railway station in Germany had psychological and drug problems, officials say. 3 other people were wounded in Grafting near Munich in the early hours of Tuesday morning before the 27-year-old was overpowered. Some eyewitnesses reported him shouting Allah Akbar, but Bavaria's interior minister has said there is no evidence the attack was politically motivated.
So
far, there is nothing to suggest this person was a risk to state security, but he recently came to the attention of police for demonstrating strange behaviour and suspected drug use. The motive for the attack is not yet known. Police inquiries continue.
Ubaydullah ibn Jahsh has the saddest story. Ubaydullah ibn Jahsh converted to Christianity, and he was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Prophet ﷺ began preaching, he accepted Islam. And he married Salama. And they then migrated to Abyssinia. So he was a Muslim, but he became a murtad when he reached Abyssinia. And he reverted back to Christianity. And that was when, of course, Salama had to leave him, and he died shortly after that. And then the Prophet ﷺ proposed, and Salama became his wife. And there's a whole story there about Ubaydullah ibn Jahsh, which we don't have time for, but one simple benefit that we can derive from this, and it's a very important benefit. If you become murtad in a land that is not ruled by the Sharia, this is your freedom. You cannot do anything. So the whole question, and I'm saying this now because our religion is being attacked, you guys have a blasphemy law. If somebody leaves a religion, you have to cut his head off. That's what we're told. The response is very simple. No. Our Sharia tells us that in lands that are not ruled by Islam, Ubaydullah ibn Jahsh converted back to Christianity. Nobody harmed a hair on his head. This is the land of Negus, the land of Najashi. Do as you please. It's not the land where the Sharia is going to be implemented. So in lands other than the land of Islam, there's no question the Sharia would say that we don't implement that. And of course, whether we implement or not, even in Islamic lands, there's a whole long conditions for that.
But terrorism, 9/11 for instance, according to classical Islamic law, is classified as hiraba, which carries the death penalty. Well, jihad is not the same as a militant perspective. Jihad just means the use of proportional force, which exists in most cultures, just war doctrine. Terrorism is something else. Terrorism is the arbitrary targeting of the innocent in order to place pressure on governments, which is something that doesn't have origins in Islamic culture or ethics and comes out of the French Revolution and certain 19th century anarchist movements that use terrorism. Its adoption in the Muslim world is very recent and is an expression of westernization. But terrorism, 9/11 for instance, according to classical Islamic law, is classified as hiraba, which carries the death penalty. So there isn't really an issue. The problem is people in the West don't know who speaks for Islam, and in most cases they don't even think that they should ask. Islam has leaders and muftis and Islamic universities that issue declarations on these things, but everybody's very vague about what Muslims actually think. So they know about Abu Qatada or whoever, but they don't know what the Mufti of Egypt is saying about anything. It's pretty hopeless, really. But then Muslims can also misunderstand what's going on in the Christian world. I met somebody in Mali 4 years ago who was a bit out of touch, no broadband connection in Timbuktu. So he told me, the leader of the Catholic Church is the Pope, and the leader of Protestant Christianity is George Bush. That was his perception of the world and religion and violence and who leads the other religion. But really, it is the case that you can read the Times from cover to cover for a whole year and not be able to name a single Muslim leader. It's just not on the screens of the chattering classes in the West that they should tell people what Muslim leaders actually think about these issues. It's just not done. I know somebody in England who told me an extraordinary story about how when he was only 14 years old, living as a non-Muslim in a part of England far from me, had a dream of a beautiful man who wore a green turban and had a smiling face, and when this teenager woke up, he felt that there was still some kind of interesting fragrance in the room, and he read and he read and he realized that it was Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he became Muslim and is now Hafiz of Quran, even though he's convert to Islam. How that happened in his dream, this is part of the Alam al-Arwah, the secret world of the spirit consciousness, strange things that happen to people in sleeping or half-waking states, and Allahu A'lam as to how that works. But in Allah's generosity, anybody, even the likes of us, can hope one day to be pulled with Allah's net out of our dunya and given something better, inshallah.